Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Guru Dev, Guru Dev, Guru Dev, Guru Dev. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jaya Kodanitai, Maya Poshashi, Kodanitai, Maya Poshashi. Kodanitai, Jaya Maya Poshashi. Iskon Guruvinda ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Shishi Kodanitai, Maya Poshashi ki jai. Gaura Premanandi Haribo. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishna Padaya Shrimati Shrivaram. So reading from Srila Prabhupada Leela. This is the final instruction. The last instruction. Over the last months of his life, Srila Prabhupada taught how it is possible to meet that step by step in Krishna consciousness. In his last days, he told one of his sannyasis, don't think this isn't going to happen to you. Prabhupada came into this world on Krishna's request to teach us how to live a pure life of Krishna consciousness, and that includes how to finally pass away from this world to attain eternal life. Prabhupada underwent death in a way that was perfect and glorious, and at the same time in a way which we can all follow. When we have to go, we can cling to the memory of how a great soul left his body. Always thinking of Krishna, surrounding himself with the medicine of chanting Hare Krishna, always desiring to hear about Krishna, and practicing detachment from the misery of the material condition. The last lesson was one of the most wonderful and important instructions Srila Prabhupada gave us. He taught by his life, by his books, and at the end by his dying. Education in how to die is meant especially for the human being. An animal dies, and a human being also dies. But a human being is supposed to understand the process of going back to the spiritual world at the time of death, remaining always fixed and undisturbed in Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada expertly taught the process as passing away, therefore was a perfect lesson, and one that can be faithfully followed. Srila Prabhupada ki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. 7th canto, and this is chapter 2, Hiranyakashipu, king of the deep. Text 16. Evam vipakrati loke, evam viprakrite loke, Daichandrana Rachaya Muhu Daichandranu Muhu Devyam Deva Parityaja Devyam Deva Parityaja Bhuvi Charo Alakshita Bhuvi Charo Alakshita Evam Viprakrite Loke Te Chandranu Rachaya Muhu Divyam Deva Parityaja Bhuvi Charo Alakshita Evam Viprakrite Loke Dechandra Nucharara Muhu Divyam Deva Parityaja Bhuvicharo Alakshita. Evam Vipakrite Loke Janam Muhu Deva Parityaja Bhuvicharo Alakshita. Evam Vipakrite Loke Janam Muhu Divyam Deva Parityaja Bhuvicharo Alakshita. Ladies. Evam Vipakrite Loke Echanan Anucher Mahu Evam Deva Parityaja Bhuvicharo Alakshita. Evam. Thus, Vipakratite, being disturbed, Loke, when all the people, Decha Indra Anucharaya, by the followers of Hiranyakashipu, the king of the Dechas, Moho, again and again, Evam, the heavenly planets, Deva, the demigods, Parityaja, giving up, Bhuvi, on the planet Earth, Charu, wondered to see the extent of the disturbances. Lakshita, unseen by the demons. Translation: thus disturbed again and again by the unnatural occurrences caused by the followers of Hiranyakashipu, all the people had to cease the activities of Vedic culture. Not receiving the results of yogya, the demigods also became disturbed. They left their residential quarters in the heavenly planets and, unobserved by the demons, began wandering on the planet Earth to see the disasters. Responsibly pleased, thus again and again, disturbed. So, by the unnatural occurrences caused by the followers of Hiranyakashipu, all the people had to cease activities of Vedic culture. Not receiving the results of yogya, the demigods also became disturbed. They left their residential quarters in the heavenly planets and, unobserved by the demons, began wandering on the planet Earth to see the disasters. But by Srila Prabhupada ki, as stated in Bhagavad Gita, the performance of yoga brings reciprocal good fortune for both the human beings and the demigods. When the performances of yoga were stopped by the disturbances of the demons, the demigods were naturally bereft of the results of yoga and hampered in executing their respective duties. Therefore, they came down to the planet Earth to see how people had now disturbed and become disturbed, and to consider what to do. Oh my God. Chakshurunmilitam jena tasmai shri gurave namaha Shite tanya manobhistam stapitam yena bhutale Swayam rupa gadamayam dadati swavadantika Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasadi Gaurabhaktarinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So the followers of Hiranyakashipu had stopped all the Vedic culture, and that disturbed the demigods, and so they came down to see what was going on. So Prabhupada says pretty much the same thing in the purport. What's interesting is on the other planets, one doesn't accrue karma. One enjoys or one suffers as karma, where it's only on Earth. So that's why Earth is a significant post that's occupied by demons, because it's from the planet Earth that you can accrue all kinds of credits. So here we are on planet Earth. Most people don't know that. In the shape of illicit sex, intoxication, eating meat, and gambling. So the demigods, they can do all those activities and not get any karma for it. And in the lower planetary systems, they just suffer so much that are distracted by the suffering condition that they're in. It's also described in the Bhagavatam that there is a subterranean heavenly planets, and they engage in sense gratification all the time, and they don't see the sun coming and going, so they have jewels on the hoods of snakes, and this illuminates the place. And they have lakes made out of elixirs, which when you bathe in takes away all bodily fatigue and age. And so they live their lives completely absorbed in sense gratification. And then eventually the Sudarshan chakra comes in and kills them. So we're in the, it's like a cosmic game of snakes and ladders, and the board is situated on the earthly planetary system, and you perform your activities, and then you either go up a ladder or you go down a snake. You go down to lower planets or you go to heaven. Or you have a combination of both. You do some good stuff, you do some bad stuff, so you get your reactions. And then eventually you come back. When it's all over, you come back here again, and you either try to get out completely or you go back again. Prabhupada refers to it as a Ferris wheel. So you go along the Ferris wheel, you go up, enjoy, and then you go down and you suffer. You go up and you enjoy, and you go down and you suffer. And this Ferris wheel just goes on continually. And at a certain point, the jiva, the soul, becomes fatigued. And he decides, okay, I've had enough of this. I want out. And that's when spiritual life begins. When we come to the point of being disgusted with material life, then we can take up spiritual life. As long as we're still enamored by material life, then we have to stay here. And the price we pay is that we have to undergo fear. Fear is there all the time. This whole pastime, Hiranyakashipu, king of the demons, he had everybody afraid in the universe. And then Lord Nrsingadev appeared. And I was just hearing yesterday, actually, that the reason why the demigods, why Lord Nrsingadev wasn't pacified when he appeared by the demigods is because the demigods were asking him for material boons. And he was annoyed at this. And then Prahlad steps forward and he offers pure devotional prayers. And although Prahlad approached Lord Nrsingadev in Dasyaras, Lord Nrsingadev reciprocated with Prahlad in Vatsalyaras, put him on his lap, gave him a cuddle, sniffed his hair, smelt his head, and placated him, reassured him, said everything is going to be okay now. Vatsalyaras. Of course, the Lord is free. He's not tied to any rules. Yayatamam papajante. We know that he reciprocates according to the devotee's surrender. But the Lord at any time can decide he wants to do more, reciprocate more, as in the case with Lord Nrsingadev. Interesting. So there's an interesting verse in the Gita. It says, if you become conscious of me, you will pass over all the obstacles of conditional life. So the challenge is, can you become conscious of Krishna? And that needs to be really qualified. What does that mean? Because the demigods were conscious of Krishna, but they were asking him for material boons, and for that reason they were still afraid. So we may be conscious of Krishna, but we may also be experiencing fear because we still have material desires. And Krishna is saying, if you become conscious of me, then you'll pass over all the obstacles. So you may be aware that Krishna is there, but are you conscious of him in pure loving devotion? Savadamam paritraja. If you abandon all varieties of religion and material desires and you surrender, then Krishna will deliver you from all sinful reactions. And then again he says there, do not fear. So part of the prerequisite for becoming conscious of Krishna is to become free from fear. If you're still afraid of whatever it is you're afraid of, then to the degree that you're afraid, to that degree you can understand that you're not conscious of Krishna. You may think you're conscious of Krishna, you're there, Haribol, dancing in front of the deities. And you've got your dhoti on and your tilak's neat. But are you free of fear? They asked Srila Prabhupada, what do you feel like when you chant? And he says, I become free from fear. So if you're chanting and you're becoming more fearful, then you're not chanting properly. And Krishna is saying, if you become conscious of me, you'll pass over all the obstacles. So the only real obstacle is, are you chanting properly? Are you chanting attentively? And there's lots of different problems with chanting. The mind makes an interpretation on the holy name. The mind thinks it's just imagination. The mind is finding faults with devotees. So many things. There's so many obstacles and hurdles. In fact, whatever it is that you're trying to deal with in your life, that's where you meet it in your japa period. That's where all the anarthas are. All the unwanted things are there in the japa period. And somewhere amidst all that, underneath it all, is Krishna just saying, come on, just hear the holy name purely with devotion, and you'll become conscious of me. If you become conscious of me, you'll pass over all that. If you don't hear me, if you don't hear, then that's the same as acting out of false ego, which is interesting, isn't it? Because you may not be hearing as a choice. You may not be hearing just because you're being lazy, but still it puts you in the position of acting out of false ego. And then nasroshasi, vinanshasi. If you don't hear, nasroshasi is to hear, not hear, then vinanshasi. Then you're lost. Away you go. Swept away by the material energy. Any questions or comments? On the cliffhanger. Yes, Pip. Pancha. Yeah, I was thinking about that this morning. Actually, it's interesting because if you become conscious of me, you'll pass over. If you don't, you're finished. So it's like Krishna does want you to be afraid, but he wants you to be afraid of the right thing. So he says, if you don't do this, you're finished. So it's like he's like, scaring you. Look, like a parent, look, if you put your hand in the fire, you're going to really suffer. So the parent's really warning the child, really putting fear into the child, so the child will be afraid to put his hand in the fire. At the same time, Krishna is saying, don't fear. He's saying, look, if you do it, then you won't have to be afraid. So sometimes the reason why we're not abandoning everything else and taking shelter from Krishna, because we're afraid that, well, maybe Krishna won't. This Prahlad was, everyone else was afraid but Prahlad. It's an amazing pastime, because there's the internal potency, Lakshmi Devi. She's afraid. Everyone's afraid. We're an exceptional personality, Prahlad is, So it's such a elevated level that Prahlad was on. He was completely free of fear because he had no material desire. And, you can imagine if someone's just ripped your dad in half, right, and pulled all his intestines out. That's going to be quite scary. And he's completely free of fear. So sometimes what stops us from surrendering is that we're afraid of Krishna. We're afraid of what it means to just become conscious of him and give everything else up. And that fear is also determined by how much we're attached to some material. If you're attached to material things and someone's trying to pull the material things away from you, then the more you're attached, the more afraid you are to have those things pulled away. That's when you find out, you may not think you're attached until the process of anartha nivritti starts. So after you've taken initiation from the spiritual master, then that's when it really starts. And that's when you start seeing, these are unwanted, Hare Krishna. How it's justified that the citizens were put into a fearful condition? Did that directly what? You mean the demigods, not the demons? Oh yeah. And how is it fair that these innocent people have been implicated? Well, everyone that's in the material world is guilty, is a criminal to one degree or another. And then the vehicle for that karma coming to them could be it could be fast tracked by Krishna. He could just decide to combine all the karma that they're due and give them a few intense. I don't know how long Hiranyakashipu was reigning, but it was interesting because the general mass of people were A-OK with Hiranyakashipu because he was keeping the season in spring and making everything flower and fruit. And there was no old age, there was no disease, there was no infirmity. Everyone was having a great time. Hiranyakashipu arranged it that the planets couldn't go into an inauspicious constellation because he would look at them and he'd go, okay guys, get into some auspicious, we'd like to go into an auspicious constellation. Everybody was so afraid that to just bring forward the sense gratification. So most people thought that was great. It's like if you bring someone in the government and, we'll lower the age of consent, we'll make cannabis legal, and if you get caught drunk, you get £100 reward. And like, yeah, vote for him, So the general mass being uneducated and innocent in the sense that they're kind of naive, they could easily be hoodwinked by a politician who decides he wants to pander to their lower intentions. So that's how the universe was running. Whereas with Lord Brahma, he was making it so that, okay, you can have a bit of enjoyment, but there's got to be some suffering to wake you up, to help you realize you need to get out of here in the first place. But they were all like, everything seems really cushy. Everything was fine, you know. And then there was the more elevated elements of society that were very pious, that didn't just want sense gratification, they wanted emancipation. So they were being disturbed. And then that was affecting the whole cosmological situation with the demigods being able to. So the demigods are also dependent upon yoga being performed, otherwise they suffer. So everything is symbiotic, they're all interdependent, you know. That's why in Kali Yuga, the weather becomes bad, the vegetables and fruit becomes less nutritious, there's no signs of jewels and gold, or it's very much reduced because the deva's not being pleased, then they retract. And then if there's Harinam Sankirtan going on, this is the real yoga for the age of Kali, then the demigods are pleased, and Krishna is pleased, and everyone's fine, there's plenty of prasadam in the pots, and everything's okay. Yes. Ashish. Back to Rupa. Haribo. We can make excuses for them. So if you're finding a fault with a devotee, say a devotee is late for Mangalati, and you can think, oh, look at him, he's in the fan club. He's in the Peacock fan club. And he turns up when the Peacock fan comes out. Krishna's fan club. He must be so spaced out, that guy. He's so insincere. Or you could think, he must have been up so late last night doing the service. Or he must have got so much into his chanting, he forgot to take rest. And look at him now. He's such a great soul. And if you learn to make excuses for other people, then when you do something wrong, you can make excuses for yourself as well. Otherwise, if you go around crucifying everybody for the slightest thing, your mind gets trained up to do that. And then when you step out of line, that mind will do the same to you. So make friends with your mind. If you have a friendly mind, then the mind is friendly with everybody else as well. It's not possible to have a nasty mind towards everybody else and a friendly mind towards you. It's like having a dog and you teach the dog to bite everybody, you know. Well, eventually the dog will bite you. So the best thing is to just really keep the dog happy and pacified, and and when the dog starts saying, no, he's probably been up late at night, you know, or maybe he couldn't sleep properly, you know. I mean, at least he made it for the peacock fan. I'm sure he's trying a lot harder than I am. And you can do the same when you're out on Sankirtan and you're giving somebody a book and the person's eating a hot dog from Greg's. And then you think, well, if that person had the amount of mercy that I have had, if he'd been to Vrindavan, if he'd had a spiritual master like I had, I'm sure he'd be doing a lot better than I am. So you can see it like that. They say appreciation appreciates and criticism depreciates. So the more you become critical, the more your appreciation reduces. And the more you're able to appreciate, because you start appreciating appreciation. I think this is really good. Because when you're appreciating people, it makes you feel good. And when you're critical of people, it's like stabbing yourself in the foot, because you're the one that suffers more than anybody else. That's why Bhaktisiddhanta said, when the faults and mistakes of others misguide and delude you, introspect and see the faults and mistakes in yourself. Nobody can harm you unless you harm yourself. So the general, default reaction we have is that if we find fault in others, then we'll be okay. But actually, it doesn't work like that in spiritual life. It's only when you find fault in yourself that you're okay. Nobody can harm you unless you harm yourself. And how do you harm yourself? By finding faults in others. So when the faults of others delude and misguide you, introspect. Think, hold on a second. Because it is actually us. There is self-realization we're practicing, not everybody else realization. So you could look at somebody and work out, he's not going to make it back to God. Well, for a start, look at his dhoti. His dhoti's right up there. It's 10 inches off the ground. It's ridiculous. Next thing, look at the turmeric stain down his kirta. Brahman underpants hanging out the back. He's not going back to God. And you're looking at everybody else, but you're not looking at yourself. What are you doing, That's how newspapers work. Newspapers deflect people worrying about themselves. You think you're bad. Look at the state of this guy. And everyone's reading the newspaper thinking, I'd never do that. I might be bad, but look at the state of him, And everyone feels okay. That doesn't work in spiritual life. You may think it does at first, but then you find you start losing enthusiasm. And then once you lose enthusiasm, you start to lose appreciation for the association of devotees. And as soon as you do that, you're on the way out. It's just a question of time. You just start seeing them as mundane. Justai Swabhava Janati Papisasta Doshana Prakritatami Bhakti Janochi Palshi Ganganga Sana Kalabudba the Faina Punkya. See, the association of devotees is like the Ganga. And sometimes there may be bubbles, foam, and mud. But those who are advanced in spiritual understanding will bathe in the Ganges without considering the condition of the water, without allowing mundane analysis and critiques to stop them from associating with the devotees. So then you don't bathe in the Ganges, so then you don't get purified. The Ganga is pure, and some of the things that are floating around in the Ganga are not pure, but the things that are floating around in the Ganga are not the Ganga. They're things we've imported from outside society. So when you look at ISKCON, you say, well, look at this and look at that. That's not ISKCON. ISKCON is the Ganga, and these things, these anomalies, have been brought in from outside, from conditioning, from and the environment. Yes, Ashish. Yeah. Yeah, the real art is to learn how to associate with devotees, and it's not that we don't discriminate. Rupa Goswami says we should respect some in the mind, offer obeisances to some, and to others reveal our heart. So the challenge is, can you learn how to navigate through the association of devotees in such a way that you don't become affected by the Kanishtas, that you befriend the Madhyamas, and you open your heart to the Uttamas? And can you distinguish who they are? The challenge is you have to, if you're going to go down the market and get yourself some stuff, you've got to know what the price should be and what the real article looks like. Otherwise, you're wasting your time. So you may say, well, I'm just a new devotee, I didn't know. Well, then you better learn fast. Otherwise, you're going to get the wrong goods. You're going to get ripped off. Who's the Kanishta? Who's the Madhyama? Who's the Uttamadhikari? And then how to associate with them all accordingly. If you don't learn how to do that, then navigating through the association is going to be very difficult. It's going to be very hard for you to cooperate. Sangha means body. Anga is the limb. So when you want to be in a Sangha, it's intimate. You're part of the body. The body suffers, you suffer. Everyone's in this together. We all need each other. So how do you know how to play your part intimately in the body? I mean, if the body's like, imagine if the hand's saying, I don't want to go anymore. Have you seen the state of that foot? He totally stinks. I've nothing to do with that foot anymore. I don't care what. If he's going to walk that way, I'm going to go this way. And the belly's saying, listen, guys, I'm the one that's having to give all the nutrition out to everyone. I'm not doing it anymore. When I get the food, I'm just going to keep it. And the belly's like right out here. And then the head's like, I'm not, I'm doing all the eating here, and nobody's giving me anything, so I'm not eating anything anymore. And then the body stops. So all the different parts of the body have to learn how they can interact with each other properly. And if they're all just criticizing, because that's where a neophyte is. A neophyte is a fighter. He's always fighting. So if you're wondering, if you see all the devotees in the Prasadam hall and they're all talking away, and you're thinking, well, who's the Kanishtas here? Just listen to who the ones who are complaining. Oh, I mean, the Prasadam was cold today. Did you see the state of it? And, they had Harinam the other week, and nobody invited me. And did you see the state of the way the deities were dressed the other week? So they're the Kanishtas. That's how you can say. You put a little K on them, a little sticker. Oh, Hari Bol, just put a little sticker there. Everyone knows it's Kanishta. Madhyamas go around the Madhyama table. Wow, I was doing books yesterday. What do you say when people say this? How do you get them to take the book? How many books did you do yesterday? You did 500 books. How did you do it? The Madhyamas are always working out how to preach. And then the Uttamas just absorbed in Krishna. And as soon as you come near an Uttama, you forget what your problems are. The Prabhupada disciples would often say they were waiting to go in to see Prabhupada about their problems. And suddenly the door would open. Srila Prabhupada was there. You say, yes, what is the problem? And they go, oh, it's okay, Prabhupada. I forgot what the problem was. So that's the association of Uttama-adhikaris. They don't feed polemic, they dissipate polemic. Polemic is like when you're arguing and fighting and politicking. And that's why when a visiting guru comes, there may be so many factions, but when the guru comes, everyone's just like, everything's okay. And when he goes, then again. That's why it's so important that we have Uttama-adhikaris and we associate with them. And there's a philosophy going around that, well, Srila Prabhupada was special. I mean, after Lord Chaitanya, there was at least 100 Nitya Siddhas that came to help spread this movement. Do you think it's going to stop now? After Srila Prabhupada? No more. No more Uttama-adhikaris. Doesn't make sense. Why would Lord Chaitanya spend so much endeavor, bring so many associates down, even after him, Srinivasacharya, Naidam Das Thakur, Goswami, all these great souls, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Gopishasma, all these great souls, and then suddenly after Srila Prabhupada, no more. It doesn't make sense, does it? So there must be Uttama-adhikaris, Nitya Siddhas, that are here and are coming down, and will be coming down in the future. Shishiko Nitai Mahapashashiki. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. Why go to such an endeavor and then suddenly just... So the challenge is, can you find them? Can you identify them and associate with them accordingly? And if you can, then there will be very little problems in Krishna consciousness. And for young devotees, they tend to think, well, no, we should just respect everybody. Been around for a long time, says. But you have to do more than that. You have to be able to discriminate by the qualities that they display and by the way that they conduct themselves. And that's not being offensive. That's just being rational. There's a big taboo against using the word discriminate. That was discrimination. That's what the human form of life is. It's all about discrimination. Otherwise, you're just an animal. It's not a bad thing to discriminate. If you've got a daughter and she wants to get married to somebody and you start checking them out, is that wrong? You're the father. You want to make sure the daughter isn't abused. She isn't left pregnant a year later and the guy's off to sunny Spain. Is that wrong? What's so bad about discrimination? To protect loved ones, surely it's necessary. And discrimination is not a bad thing. You discriminate, well, the animal, why are we killing the animal and eating it? The animal's alive, the animal's got feelings. Why do we not use our discrimination to see that the animal also has a right to live? We get dulled down in society. This is what the media is doing. It's dulling everyone down. Look, just pay the bills, get into debt, and just work until you die. And people are thinking, maybe there's something more. There's something more to this. Any other questions or comments? Yes. How can we recognize them? We should become very conversant with what the qualities are of an Uttama-adhikari by reading Srila Prabhupada's books very discerningly. I'm sure you must have come across a few statements. How long have you been reading Srila Prabhupada's books now? Half an hour? A few years? It's hard to read Srila Prabhupada's books and not find descriptions of the Uttama-adhikari. When we're reading, we should actually be studying. Say you've got some problem. Say your problem is you don't know what an Uttama-adhikari is, and you pick up the book and you're reading, and you're just reading it. Well, surely you would be thinking that I need to really discern what the Uttama-adhikari is. In fact, I'll start a study, and I'll title it Uttama-adhikari. And every time I see a statement, I'll write it down about an Uttama-adhikari in Srila Prabhupada's books. Not be my project, so that you can read with some focus, rather than just. I read for half an hour. What did you read? And then you know that happens because sometimes you lose your mark in the book and you go back to read it the next day, and then you're reading it and like half an hour later you realize, oh, I read that yesterday. But it just went in one ear, not the other. So it's good when you're reading to study. A good subject is the holy name. Have a little notebook, call it the holy name. Every time you read something that's really far out about the holy name, you write it down, and just before you chant, You read it. Because we don't have any memory. Mandasamanda Matayo. In Kali Yuga, there's practically no memory there at all. You know, Bhaktisiddhanta, you know how Bhaktisiddhanta used to read the newspaper? Like that. They put the newspaper down, you'd be in the train, and you're reading the newspaper because you had a photographic memory. But we don't have that now, you know. So if you read something and you find it really enlightening, really inspiring, Astra is weapon, and Shastra is basically weapons that we can throw at the material energy. If you don't know what Adhikari is, study, find out, and then when you're discerning, you've got those weapons to dissipate the ignorance. And the ignorance is very strong. When you pick up your bead bag in the morning at 5:15, you've just had 6 hours with Tamagun. And you've had a quick Mangalati, and there you are now. So the challenge is, are you sufficiently armed to dispel the malaise that is enshrouding your consciousness so that you can understand that all you have to do, your only object of existence, is to hear that name with nothing else, no other thought. Just that. The only thinking going on in your head is the Maha Mantra. There's no other thought. That's it. And connecting with that and implementing that is the challenge. Or do we just drift? Are we drifting when we're chanting? You can see who's drifting when they're chanting, actually, because of the way they chant. They're just like... And then when they're connected, then they're like stuck on it, you know? And that's the challenge. Can you connect? And then can you stay connected? Because once you connect, then you can stay connected all day. Because we're doing 16 rounds minimal, but it's a lot easier if you do 64. But that was Lord Chaitanya's time. He wouldn't eat in the house of someone that didn't chant the lakh of names, which is 100,000, which is 64 rounds. So Srila Prabhupada said, okay, look, just do 16. But he said only do 16 as like a kind of, you know, emergency. But the real ideal situation is to chant more than 16, at least 16. But the more you chant, the easier you make it for yourself. Not the less you chant, the easier you make it for yourself. Because then we should just chant one round. Then it'd be a lot easier, wouldn't it? We'd make as many offenses if we just chant one round. And there's a philosophy going around like that. Look, just do 4 rounds, because that way you don't make as many offenses. Well, if you don't make any offenses, don't chant any rounds. You don't make any offenses. But part of the chanting process is you have to go through the Namaparad stage. Everybody has to go through it. You have to go through the offensive stage, and then you come to the clearing stage, Namabas. So you can't get to the offensive stage and decide, oh, I'm too offensive. You're never going to get to Namabas. You have to continue, and you have to push through. So you have to go through it. You have to realize, actually, this chanting is really offensive. I'm just totally not attentive at all. Okay, that's fine. You've seen it now. Now we can do something about it. We have freedom of choice, but what we want is freedom from choice. Because freedom of choice means you can accept that it's your fault and you can choose to do something else. But if you blame everything, oh, well, you know, the prasadam was terrible, and oh, it was so cold in the room and I couldn't sleep, and you know, how can you expect? So freedom from choice is what we want. But freedom of choice is what we have. So if you're unhappy, it's because you chose to be. Oh, no, but it's because of it. No, you chose to be unhappy. It's your choice. Oh, I'm spaced out. Yeah, you chose to be spaced out. Oh, I can't get into it. Yeah, you chose not to get into it. Oh, I'm not enthusiastic. Yeah, you chose. Just say, look, I chose not to be enthusiastic. People don't like to say, oh, I can't do that, rather than say, actually, I prefer not to do that, which is more honest. But I can't do that. It's easier, isn't it? Because then nobody can blame. Well, he couldn't do it, you know. Can't blame him. No, you chose not to do it. You preferred not to do it. And that's why if you break down maternal attachment, it's 3 things: negligence of rules and regulations, the conception of void, and fear of personal identity. And the fear of the personal identity is what people don't like, because personal identity means you're accountable. So when you say rule, How come you didn't come to offer Mangala? Oh, sorry, I was spaced. Why did you space out? Oh, sorry, I didn't. I lost my watch. Why did you? Whatever it is, But basically, what it comes down to is I don't want to be pinned down and blamed for anything. I just want to be this nebulous cloud that floats around, and sometimes I'm on time, and sometimes I'm not. Don't get on my case. Don't judge me. I just kind of float around and do stuff, and sometimes I'm in the right place at the right time, and sometimes I'm not. Is there a problem with that? No, you have to be there. You have to be the item. You have to be there on time. You have to be doing the right thing. Oh, I don't think I can handle this for you. But that's what being a person is. Impersonalism is, don't, I'm just a kind of vague thing, don't try and quantify me. I'm just, that's what impersonalism is. I'm just this kind of blob that kind of floats. That's what impersonalism is. And Gyan, we're trying to get free from Gyan and Karma. So Karma is just fruitive desire. But Jnana is the desire to merge, to be carefree. So we may think, oh, I'm not a Jnani. But if we don't like inconvenience, and we don't like responsibility, we don't like to be accountable, that's Jnana. Jnana is I just manage into the absolute. There's no more problems anymore. And sometimes we're thinking that's what Krishna consciousness is going to be. And I just chant, I shave my head, and I just float around all day and everything's great. We don't tell you this when you join, we just tell you this later on, so I just put you off. So we can read it and think, oh, I'm not a Mayavadi, oh, I'm not an impersonalist, oh, you wouldn't catch me, But then we actually are. We're actually heavily influenced by the way we've been educated and by the association we've had. So that's fine. We address that. We see, okay, so that means that type of attitude is offensive. Okay, so let me deal with it. Let me make the right choice. Let me work on this. And we don't become, Rupa Goswami overnight. So, these devotees are very, very elevated. Prahlad Maharaj, they're very, very elevated. But that's okay. So we're not going to become Prahlad tomorrow, but we can go a step closer to what Prahlad is like. We can just go a little bit smaller increments. Don't let what you can do stop what you can't do. If you keep doing what you can do, eventually you'll be able to do what you can't do. But if you allow what you can't do to stop you doing what you can do, then you're never going to be able to do what you can't do because you won't even do what you can do. Then you're stuck. So just do what you can do and just try to make that a little bit better. Because we can all do that. We can make it a little bit better. And sometimes it'll be one step forward and two steps back. That's okay. We'll just make two steps forward the next day and only one step back. You just keep pushing on, keep trying. And Krishna says, in this endeavor, there's no loss of diminution. He doesn't say in the result. The result may be up and down and all over the place. But at least our endeavor, we can be enthusiastic and we can be happy. Believe it or not, we can choose to be happy. Isn't that amazing? But people that are unhappy are choosing not to be. And they're trying to say, well, it's because of this and that. It's you. You decide. There's a happy button somewhere inside there. You can press it and go, yee. Or you can press the unhappy button. You choose. Nobody else. Nobody else can get inside your head and press the button. You decide. And if you're reactive, then you're dependent upon what's going on around you. And if you're proactive, it doesn't matter what's going on around you. It doesn't matter. You'd have 2 heart attacks. You'd be 70 years old. You could go to a country that it's a foreign language with no money, and you can still be proactive. Well, this is going to work because I've got faith in my guru. Now imagine what a reactive person would be like. Everyone's telling them not to go. Everyone's saying you're not going to make it. It even looks like he's not going to make it. It was a crazy risk. Inside these freight ships, it's like a factory through a loudspeaker because there's no insulation on the inside. So the engine is really loud sound. And there's no peace. It's just continually just that alone. And you've got the waves. There's no. It's completely no luxury at all, totally industrial. And there you are, a frail man, going into we've had so many Indians like the idea of coming to Scotland, and then they come here and then they realize it's going to be really cold. And it's just too much, you know. So when you're not used to it, and you come to it. I think Prabhupada, that the first time he saw snow was in New York. You know? And he said, Prabhupada said this is Jonas Kishore's disciple. Prabhupada said, if you do devotional service in Scotland, you make twice the advancement because it's so cold. So anyone that wants to make a lot of advancement should just stay here. You speed up the process. That was what Prabhupada said. And Prabhupada had a special affection as well for Scotland because his teachers were all Scottish and he considered them very decent, of very high integrity. You know? When he was in Woodside Halls and he says, "You are not God, you are a dog." And everyone stood up and applauded. You know? That was an amazing triumph for Srila Prabhupada that the Scottish people appreciate. And Prabhupada had that little thing as well that one of his Scottish teachers had told him that there can't be such a thing as karma because nobody witnesses it. So that was always, you know, so Prabhupada, when he brought his books, he really hammered that point. Jai, yes, Kanguruvinda Ki, Srila Prabhupada Ki, Go, Premanandi. All of you.